Good morning and welcome to the class. The school is Azizi. Today we're going to read and understand chapter number 4, which is Albert Einstein at School. Is from your English book Snapshots. The lesson Albert Einstein at School is an extract from the biography of Albert Einstein. And the name of that book is The Young Einstein. It's written by Patrick Pringle. The book Young Einstein, it is well known biography by Patrick Pringle that describes the circumstances which led to Albert Einstein's expulsion from a German school. I'll just read the paragraphs for you and I'll explain. So basically the chapter starts with the conversation between Albert Einstein and his history teacher at the school. In what year, Einstein, asked the history teacher, did the Prussians defeat the French at Waterloo? So the teacher asked Albert Einstein if he knew that the Prussians defeated the French at Waterloo. I don't know, sir. Why don't you know? You have been told it often enough. I must have forgotten. Did you ever try to learn? Asked Mr. Braun. No, sir, Albert replied with his usual unthinking honesty. Why not? I can't see any point in learning dates. One can always look them up in book. Mr. Braun was speechless for a few moments. You amaze me, Einstein, he said at last. Don't you realize that one can always look most things up in books? That applies to all the facts you learn at school. Yes, sir. Then I suppose you don't see any point in learning facts. Frankly, sir, I don't, said Albert. So basically, if you look at this paragraph, it's quite simple to understand that the conversation between Albert Einstein and the history teacher asked Albert Einstein a question if he knew whether the Prussians defeated the French at Waterloo. But as usual, Einstein does not remember it. And he told the history teacher the truth that he didn't know. And on that, the history teacher was quite amazed. He was surprised. And he asked why he did not know, because the answer was taught to him quite often. So on that, Albert Einstein replied that he couldn't see a point of learning dates. And he also said that if he needed to see the date, he could just look into the book for the date. So these were the conversations between Albert Einstein and the history teacher, which shows that Albert Einstein didn't have any interest learning these kind of subjects. Then you don't believe in education at all? Oh yes, sir, I do. I don't think learning facts is education. In that case, said the history teacher with heavy sarcasm, perhaps you will be so kind as to tell the class the Einstein theory of education. So, after getting these answers from Einstein, the history teacher said to Albert Einstein that he didn't believe in education at all. But Albert Einstein said he did. But in his point, it was not necessary to learn. Learning facts was education. And then the history teacher asked him if he could explain the theory of education in his own point of view. But that was a sarcasm, means like he was taunting Albert Einstein. Albert flushed. I think it's not facts that matter, but ideas, he said. I don't see the point in learning the dates of battles or even which of the armies killed more men. I would be more interested in learning why those soldiers were trying to kill each other. That's enough. Mr. Brown's eyes were cold and cruel. So Albert Einstein basically he started giving explanation why he was not interested in learning dates. He was rather more interested knowing that why these soldiers were fighting with each other. They were trying to kill each other. So on that, Mr. Barnes, the history teacher, got angry. We don't want a lecture from you, Einstein. You will stay in for an extra period today, although I don't imagine it will do you much good. It won't do the school any good either. You are a disgrace. I don't know why you continue to come. It's not my wish, sir, Albert pointed out. Then you are an ungrateful boy and ought to be ashamed of yourself. I suggest you ask your father to take you away. So, like I said, the history teacher got quite angry on his answers, and he punished Albert Einstein by saying that he should stay for an extra period that day, and he also knew that it wasn't much punishment for Albert Einstein, and it was not good either for the school. And he addressed Albert Einstein was a disgrace, and he suggested him that he should ask his father to take him away from the school. And he also said that he was an ungrateful boy, and he should be ashamed of himself. Albert felt miserable when he left school that afternoon. Not that it had been a bad day. Most days were bad day now, anyway. But because he had to go back to the hateful place the next morning, he only wished his father would take him away. But there was no point in even asking. He knew what the answer would be. He would have to stay until he had taken his diploma. So that afternoon, after that incident, Albert was quite unhappy when he left the school for the day. And he was not unhappy because he was punished and he had to stay for an extra period. It was a bad day for him. But the thought of going to the school every morning made him unhappy. And his only wish was that his father would take him away. But there was no point even asking him, because he knew the answer that his father would say that he had to stay there until he completed his diploma. Going back to his lodgings did not cheer him up. His father had so little money to spare that Albert had been found a room in one of the poorest quarters of Munich. Munich is a place in Germany city, Munich city, and that's where he was staying. That's where he had his room, and the locality was quite bad. It was like it wasn't very good. He did not mind the bad food and lack of comfort, or even the dirt and squalor, but he hated the atmosphere of slum violence. His landlady beat her children regularly, and every Saturday her husband came drunk and beat her. Here, the word squalor, it means like the situation, the state of being extremely dirty and not good, especially as a result of poverty and neglect. So, this was the description of that area where Albert Einstein was living during the school. His room was not in a nice locality. It was quite like dirty and unpleasant environment, and he was not bothered. He was not worried about food and lack of comfort. But what he was worried, he didn't like the atmosphere of the slum violence. His landlady, the owner of that room, she was a lady, and she used to beat her children regularly. So there was a noise all the time in that house. And every Saturday, her husband came drunk and beat her. But at least you have a room of your own, which is more than I can say, said Yuri when he called round in the evening. Yuri was a friend of him, and so this conversation going on between Albert Einstein and his friend Yuri. At least you live among civilized human beings, even if they are all poor students, said Albert. They are not all civilized, Yuri replied. Did you not hear that one of them was killed last week in a duel? Duel means like a kind of fight or contest with weapons between two people. And what happens to the one who killed him? Nothing, of course. He is even proud of it. His only worry is that the authorities have told him not to fight any more duels. He is upset about this because he has a single scar, a cut mark, on his face to wear for the rest of his life as a badge of honor. Oh, exclaimed Albert. And these are the students. Well, you will be a student one day, said Yuri. I doubt it, said Albert gloomily. So, just like Albert, his friend Yuri was also not very happy with the atmosphere of where he was living. So he reminds Albert that he should be glad about the fact that he has a room of his own to live, even though the neighborhood is not something he likes. But in return, Albert reminds Yuri that even though Yuri lives among poor students, they are all civilized and non-violent. Means not fighting or doing any crime or something like that. But Yuri stopped Albert Einstein, and he reminded him that if he had not heard the news that one man last week killed another in a fight, the one who killed him did not face any circumstances except never being allowed to play a duel again. The only regret that guy had was that he won't be able to show off a scar as a symbol of bravery. Albert sighs at the state of students pursuing diplomas. Yuri then gives Albert some hope by saying that he will be a student too, to which Albert expresses his doubtfulness. So he was not sure if he would complete his diploma. I don't think I'll ever pass the exams for the school diploma, he told his cousin Elsa the same next time she came to Munich. Normally, she lived in Berlin, where her father had a business. So now another character has been introduced, whose name was Elsa. Elsa. So she was cousin of Albert Einstein, and when she came Munich, Albert Einstein told her the same thing. Normally, she lived in Berlin, where her father had a business. I'm sure you could learn enough to pass the exams, Albert, if you tried, she said. I know lots of boys who are much more stupid than you are, who get through. So his cousin Elsa tried to explain and tried to convince that it wasn't difficult to pass the diploma, and she knew that there were so many boys who already gone through. They succeeded, they completed diploma, who were more like stupid even. They say you don't have to know anything, you don't have to understand what you are taught, just be able to repeat it in the exams. That's the whole trouble, said Albert. I'm no good at learning things by heart. So basically, Elsa tried to tell Albert Einstein that he did not need to understand everything, whatever he was taught. All he had to do is to learn by heart and just to repeat it in the exams. And but Albert Einstein was not good at that. So he told Elsa that it was hard for him to learn things by heart. You don't need to be good at it. Anyone can learn like a parrot. You just don't try. And yet, I always see you with a book under your arm, added Elsa. What is the one you are reading? A book on geology? Geology? Rocks and things. Do you learn that? No, we have hardly any science at school. Then why are you studying it? Because I like it. Isn't that a good enough reason? Elsa sighed. You are right, of course, Albert, she said, but it won't help you with your diploma. So basically, Elsa was trying hard to convince and to make Albert Einstein understand that all he had to do is to learn things like parrot does. And even she mentioned that as Albert Einstein always carried book, and she noticed one book under his arm. So she asked what was it about. And Albert Einstein told Elsa that was a book of geology. On that, she was surprised because the book was about the rocks and things. And she asked Albert Einstein if he learned these things at the school. So Albert Einstein told Elsa that he did not have science at the school. And when Elsa asked that why he was studying it then, so Albert Einstein explained that he liked it and he convinced Elsa that that was a good enough reason to study that kind of book. But finally, Elsa said that it was not going to help him to pass his diploma, to complete his diploma. Apart from books on science, his only comfort was music, and he played his violin regularly until his landlady asked him to stop. That wailing gets on my nerves, he said. There is enough noise in this house with all the kids howling. Albert was tempted to point out that most of the time it was she who made them howl, but he decided it was better to say nothing. Here, the word wailing means like crying, making noises with the anger or pain. Howling, Howling. Howling means again making noises, making sound. So Albert was very interested. His interest was in reading books, science books, and after that, when he got time, he used to play violin. He loved music. He played the violin a lot, but only until his landlady, the owner of the room, the house, told him to stop. The sound, according to her, irritated her, and she justified by saying that kids already make a lot of noise in the house. Albert wanted to point out that it was her who was making the kids cry all the time and making those kind of sound. Somehow he resisted the urge to say it, probably for the better. I must get away from here, he told Yuri after 6 months alone in Munich. It is absurd that I should go on like this. In the end, it will turn out I have been wasting my father's money and everyone's time. So he spent nearly 6 months in Munich, and after that, he expressed to his friend Yuri that he thinks it's high time for him and he must move away from here. He sees no point in carrying on like this, because if he does, it is only going to result in wastage of his father's money, everyone's time and efforts. It will be better for all if I stop now. And then what will you do? Yuri asked. I don't know. If I go to Milan I'm afraid my father will send me back unless his eyes gleamed with a sudden idea. Yuri, do you know any friendly doctors? I know a lot of medical students and some of them are friendly, said Yuri. Doctor, no, I have never had enough money to go to one. Why? So now Yuri asked if he has any backup plans, to which Albert says that going to Milan wouldn't be such a great idea because his father would send him back. They were discussing all about it when suddenly an idea came to Albert Einstein's mind. He asked his friend Yuri if he knew any doctors. Unfortunately, Yuri could not afford to go to one, but he did have a lot of friends from the medical field. Suppose, said Albert, that I had a nervous breakdown. Suppose a doctor would say it's bad for me to go to school and I need to get right away from it. So, what Albert Einstein told his friend Yuri to think that if he had a nervous breakdown and he asked him to imagine if a doctor would say it was bad for Albert Einstein to go to school and he needed to get right away from it. I can't imagine a doctor saying that, said Yuri. I must try, said Albert, to find a doctor who specializes in nerves. There are plenty of them, Yuri told him. He hesitated for a moment and then added, rather reluctantly, I'll ask some of the students if they know one, if you like. Will you? Oh, thank you, Yuri. Albert's eyes were shining. Wait a moment, I haven't found one yet. Oh, but you will. And if I do, I don't know if he will be willing to help you. He will, declared Albert. I'm going to have a real nervous breakdown. To make it easier for him, he laughed merrily. I have never seen you looking less nervous, remarked Yuri. A day or two at school will soon put that right, Albert assured him. So here, Yuri, his friend, he didn't think the idea was a success because it was merely likely for a doctor to advise something like that, which was not true. But Albert still wanted to just give a try and asked his friend Yuri to find a doctor that is specialized in nerves, who treats like a patient like having um, uh, nervous system and those kind of diseases. Yuri offers to ask one of his friends about such a doctor, and Albert was assured, in fact, he was assured that Yuri would definitely find him one. So, this is how the conversation went on between Albert Einstein and Yuri, and uh, his friend Yuri was going to find a doctor who was specialized in nerves, and Albert Einstein was quite sure that Yuri would definitely find one. Certainly, he had lost his high spirits when Yuri saw him next. I can't stand it any longer, he said. I really shall have a nervous breakdown that will satisfy any doctor. Keep it up then, said Yuri. I have found a doctor for you. You have? Albert's face lit up. Oh, good. When can I see him? I have an appointment for you for tomorrow evening, Yuri said. Here is the address. He handed Albert a piece of paper. Dr. Unswell. Is he specialized in nervous troubles? Albert asked. So, if you look at this paragraph, there's nothing much to explain. There's no difficult word, in fact, even. So, these are the conversation between Albert Einstein and his friend Yuri when they met after the previous meeting, when Albert Einstein mentioned to his friend Yuri that if he knew any doctor who was specialized in nervous troubles. So now Yuri had found one, and whose name was Ernstwell. So when Albert asked if he was specialized in nervous troubles, not exactly, Yuri admitted. As a matter of fact, he only qualified as a doctor last week. You may even be his first patient. You knew him as a student then. I have known Ernst for years. Yuri hesitated for a few moments. He's not a fool, he warned Albert. What do you mean? Don't try to pull the wool over his eyes. That's all. Be frank with him, but don't pretend you have got what you haven't. Not that you deceive anyone, Yuri added. You are the world's worst liar. Yuri told him that he was not exactly a neuro specialist, but he qualified as a doctor only last week. And also, he mentioned that Albert could even be his first patient. And one thing, especially, Yuri mentioned about the doctor, that he was not a fool, so don't try to make him fool. So just don't try to lie him. Just tell him what he had. Yuri asked him to be honest and not pretend to have nervous issues. He immediately mentioned that it was also not possible because Albert is the world's worst liar. Albert spent the next day wondering what to tell the doctor. When the time arrived for his appointment, he had worried over it so much that he really was quite nervous. I don't really know how to describe my trouble, Dr. Well, he began. Don't try, said the young doctor with a friendly smile. So now Albert Einstein had come to see the doctor, and Albert Einstein said to the doctor he didn't know how to begin with. On that, the doctor said, so don't even try to tell the trouble. Yuri has already given me a history of the case. Oh, what did he say? So now it looked like that his friend Yuri had already told his friend doctor about Albert Einstein, and Albert Einstein was curious to know what Yuri had already told him. Only that you want me to think you have had a nervous breakdown and say that you mustn't go back to that school. Oh dear, Albert's face fell. He shouldn't have told you that. Why not? Isn't it true then? Yes, that's the trouble. Now you will say there's nothing wrong with me and you'll tell me to go back to school. Don't be too sure of that, said the doctor. As a matter of fact, pretty sure you are in nervous state about that school, but I haven't told you anything about it, said Albert, wide-eyed. How can you know that? So now Albert Einstein was a bit disappointed, knowing that the doctor well already knew the truth and now he would not help. But as a result, he would have to uh, go back to school. Again, the doctor, Dr. Well, was quite friendly. He tried to comfort him and he said that his situation was well understood even when he had not told anything about it. Albert was surprised with the doctor's reply and asked him how he got to know all about Albert. Because you wouldn't have come to see me about this if you hadn't been pretty close to a nervous breakdown. That's why. Now, said the doctor briskly, if I certify that you have had a nervous breakdown and must stay away from school for a while, what will you do? I'll go to Italy, said Albert, to Milan, where my parents are. And what will you do there? I'll try to get into an Italian college or institute. How can you without a diploma? I'll ask my mathematics teacher to give me something about my work, and perhaps that will be enough. I have learned all the maths they teach at school and a bit more, he added when Dr. Well looked doubtful. So, when Albert Einstein was curious that how the friendly doctor, Dr. Well, knew everything, so the doctor tried to comfort him by saying so many things. So he said further that if he was not really close to a nervous breakdown, he wouldn't be really coming and seeing him. So now the doctor asked him what was his plan when he got out of the school. So Albert Einstein told him that he had planned to go to Italy, where his parents lived, and he would join an Italian college. The doctor asked him that how he would get even admission without completing the school diploma. So on that, Albert assured the doctor that he would get something in writing from the mathematics teacher, and that would be good enough for him to convince the school, and whatever he was taught in the school, that was more than enough to get admission according to Albert Einstein. Well, it's up to you, he said. I doubt if it will come off, but I can see you are not doing yourself or anyone else much good by staying here. How long would you like me to say should stay away from school? Would 6 months be all right? This is very kind of you. It's nothing. I have only just stopped being a student myself, so I know how you feel. Here you are. Dr. Bell handed him the certificate and the best of luck. How much? Nothing. If you have anything to spare, invite you to a meal. He's a good friend of mine, and yours too, I think. Albert had no money to spare, but he pretended he had and took Yuri out to supper. Supper means meal, what you eat in the night. So the doctor was still not convinced with the idea of Albert Einstein that he would get succeed to uh, get admission in the Italian school. And the fact that Albert going to school was not doing anyone much good. So he confirmed if 6 months certificate being away from the school would be enough for him. And looking at the situation, because Dr. Well had just completed his college, he just recently became a doctor, so he had idea how student felt during the school. So he didn't say much. He even refused to take fees from Albert Einstein, but he asked him if he could take Yuri for dinner, for a meal in the night. And in fact, Albert Einstein didn't have money, but he pretended. He just pretended that he had, and he would take Yuri for a meal. He didn't have even money to pay the doctor fees, but he pretended. Isn't it wonderful? He said after showing Yuri the certificate. Yes, it is fine. Yuri agreed. 6 months is a good period. This way you won't actually be leaving the school, so if the worst comes to the worst, you will be able to come back and carry on for your diploma. I will never go back to that place, Albert assured him. I'm going to take the certificate to the head teacher tomorrow, and that will be the end of it. Don't forget to get a reference in writing from your mathematics teachers first, Yuri reminded him. So once he got the certificate from the doctor, he shown to Yuri, and in this paragraph there's nothing to explain. So these are the conversation. Albert Einstein told Yuri that he was not going to go back to the school again. He was going to meet the head teacher and show this certificate, and he would just get out of this school. And on that, Yuri reminded him not to forget to take a reference certificate from the mathematics teachers. Mr. Coach willingly gave Albert the reference he wanted. If I say I can't teach you anymore, and probably you will soon be able to teach me, will that be all right? He asked. That's saying too much, sir, said Albert. So here, the mathematics teacher gave him the reference, the certificate he wanted, and this mathematics teacher knew that Albert was a bright student. Said Albert, it's only the truth, but all right, I'll put it more seriously. It was still a glowing reference, and Mr. Coach made the point that Albert was ready immediately to enter a college or institute for the study of higher mathematics. I'm sorry you are leaving us, although you are wasting your time in my class, he said. It's almost the only class where I'm not wasting my time, said Albert. So these are the conversation between the mathematics teacher and Albert Einstein. And the teacher knew that Albert was quite good in mathematics, and he said that he was wasting his time in that class. But Albert said that was the class only he always enjoyed. But how did you know I'm leaving, sir? You wouldn't have asked me for this reference otherwise. I thought you would wonder. There's nothing to wonder about, Einstein. I knew you were going to leave before you knew yourself. Albert was puzzled. What did the teacher mean? He soon found out. Before he had a chance to ask for an interview with the head teacher, he was summoned to the head's room. Well, it saves me the trouble of having to wait an hour or two outside, he thought. So, after taking that certificate, the reference from the mathematics teacher, he was about to go to meet the head teacher, but he was already asked to go and see the head teacher. So he thought that it was good because now he had not to wait outside for an hour or two, and so that really saved him from the trouble of waiting. He hardly bothered to wonder why he had been sent for, but vaguely supposed he was to be punished again for bad work and laziness. Well, he had finished with punishments. So now, Albert did not put much thought into why he was called into the office, but somehow he knew it was to punish him for his poor performance and lack of interest. But how he was done with all of it. I'm not going to punish you, the head teacher said to Albert's surprise. Your work is terrible, and I'm not prepared to have you have any longer, Einstein. I want you to leave the school now. Leave school now? Repeated Albert, dazed. That is what I said. You mean, said Albert, that I'm to be expelled? So when Albert Einstein went to see the head teacher told him that he was not going to punish, but he had to leave the school. And on that sentence, the word, Albert was dazed. He repeated the word, saying that to leave the school, and he inquired if he meant that he was to be expelled. Expelled means like a person who officially leaves a school or any other organization. You can take it that way if you wish, Einstein. The head teacher was not mincing words. The simplest thing will be for you to go of your own accord, and then the question won't rise. But, said Albert, what crime have I committed? So, when Albert Einstein tried to inquire if he was being expelled from the school, and so he asked that what he meant. So, on that, head teacher explained him that he was not really bothered, in fact, that what he understood, but what he said, that he wanted Albert Einstein to leave the school on all by himself. So there was no question raised about that why he had to leave the school. So now Albert asked the teacher, the head teacher, that if he had committed any crime. Your presence in the classroom makes it impossible for the teacher to teach and for the other pupils to learn. So when Albert Einstein asked the head teacher if he had committed any crime, so the head teacher explained him that his presence in the classroom made impossible for the teachers to teach the students, and also it was difficult for the students to learn. You refuse to learn, you are in constant rebellion, and no serious work can be done while you are there. Albert felt the medical certificate almost burning a hole in his pocket. I was going to leave anyway, he said. Then we are in agreement at least, Einstein, the head, said. So when the head teacher explained him everything why he wanted Albert Einstein to leave the school, and because Albert Einstein was going to leave the school anyway, so he thought that taking that certificate was is just like wasting time and things. So when he told the head teacher that he was going to leave the school anyway, so the the head teacher said that. So they were equal now. So they had an agreement. For a moment, Albert was tempted to tell the man what he thought of him and of his school. Then he stopped himself. Without another word, holding his head high, he stepped out. He stepped out, just like leaving the place quietly. And quietly, in the sense like when you don't say anything and leave the place by showing like showing anger face or something like that. So that's what stopped out means. So he stopped out. Shut the door after you, shouted the head. Albert ignored him. He walked straight on out of the school where he had spent 5 miserable years without turning his head to give it at a last look. He could not think of anyone he wanted to say goodbye to. Indeed, Yuri was almost the only person in Munich he felt like seeing before he left the town he had come to hate almost as much as the school. Elsa was back in Berlin, and he had no other real friends. Goodbye and good luck, said Yuri when he left. You are going to a wonderful country, I think. I hope you will be happier there. So, because Albert did not know anyone there, and when he was leaving the school, he did not even look back at the place he had spent the most terrible years of his life. So this is how the chapter ended, and I know it's long, but one thing, if you have realized, observed, it was quite easy. While you read, you understand everything. So all you have to do is to do reading and remember things, whatever happened. Okay, then rest of the things we can discuss in our Zoom classes. Thank you very much. Bye bye.